it was written in such a way that, fully realized each character and gave them all agency and humanity in and of themselves. And that was something that I hadn't really read or seen before, especially pertaining to immigrant Asian American cinema.
Let's get straight in there and talk about the genesis of this project. I mean, Isaac, clearly it's a very personal project for you. It's based loosely based on your own experiences. Can you talk a little bit about how close is it to your experience? Talk about the inspirations for this project.
Sure. The film really did start as an exercise for me in which I was writing down a lot of memories that I have from childhood. I had been wanting to make this film for a while, but never really knew how to do it and how to start. But I was inspired by this writer named Willa Cather, who said that her work started when she started to remember, when she stopped trying to admire and follow the lead of other writers, and she just started to look into her own experiences. So one day in the library here where I live, I just sat down and I started to write all these memories. And as I got to around 80 memories, I started to see the shape of a story in which a family arrives at a mobile home in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas, and the mother had no idea that the father would take the family there. And that really comes from my true life. And kind of ends with a family gathering Minari together at a patch where the grandmother has planted this plant from Korea. And that's something that came from real life as well. So once I had these memories down, I saw several themes coming out, and also the shape of a story in which each character could really have some sort of arc. And then I just got busy with that script. I got to work with it, and it came out pretty quickly, I got to say. It felt like something that I had just been sitting on and chewing over all my life. So once I started to really write it, it just flowed out, and it's almost a blur how that happened.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the writing process? I mean, obviously, as the film is inspired by your own childhood, presumably the character of David, the little boy, is a character that you kind of related to. But during the writing process, did you find yourself identifying with other characters more as well? So, for example, Jacob, was it sort of an interesting way to get to know your own parents a little bit more, perhaps?
Oh, definitely. As I started to write, I just thought this story is not going to work as a family portrait if I'm only entering into it at the level of David. If that's all that I see myself in, I kind of felt like every single person in the family needs to have some sort of agency and needs to have their own humanity. And the only way that I knew I could do that was if I injected my own thoughts and feelings and my own experiences into each of the characters. And naturally, I gravitated a lot to Jacob, played by Stephen, and the idea of a man who is exactly my age and has children who are the age of my daughter, and out to start a new life somewhere, doing something that many might say is crazy. And that's kind of what I felt I was doing with trying to pursue becoming a filmmaker. So I identified a lot with Jacob, but also I identified with a lot of the other characters as well. Even crazy Paul, I see myself in that guy quite a lot as well. So yeah, it was quite a joy to work on this script and to explore each person. I think Dostoevsky, when he talks about his novels, he says that he really does that with each character, that he can't say that he identifies with just a single one, but he's peppered through all of them. And that's something that I hope to do with this.
I'm just going to pick up on one thing. What of you is in Crazy Paul? Because it seems quite unlikely that you don't come across as Crazy Paul to me. I
think I I gravitate to the idea of looking at the world in a more magical way, in ways that are not just surface level and not just rational, but really seeing, you know, the spirit and everything, and that's something that I had a lot of fun writing this and having that sort of fanciful sort of approach to looking at the world.
Stephen, I mean, this film it's based on Lee's life, but loosely based on it. But as a Korean American who was born in South Korea but raised in America, did you? I mean, presumably you found there was a connection for you. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you felt when you first read the material?
Yeah, you know what rang really true for me when I read the script the first time was just how much it was kind of unhindered by any outside gaze. It really didn't need to define itself by juxtaposing itself to something else, but it was just really like a true and honest telling of a perspective that I deeply can identify with. And you know, in connecting with Isaac about it, the thing that, you know, at least personally for me, that I think is kind of the start of the journey of at least Jacob that I identify with, that perhaps Isaac might as well, is in some ways a theme of isolation, just trying to make your own way, just apart from the systems that you know, and how kind of how complex that idea is, how you might drag your family with you while you're doing that, but also there's such a distinct like natural urge to want to create something like that, and that tension between your ego and kind of the real relational life that you live is a tough one. And so yeah, there was just so much there, you know, even on very basic points, just being able to see a representation of our parents' generation and the story that they lived, not just in a memory or from even our own gaze, but rather it was written in such a way that, you know, fully realized each character and gave them all agency and humanity in and of themselves. And that was something that I hadn't really read or seen before, especially pertaining to immigrant Asian American cinema. A lot of the time, I think, you know, you're seeing something that tries to understand your parents from your point of view, and that's always in some ways kind of not the full picture. And yeah, it was really cool to play Jacob, because it felt free to show that.
You mentioned, you know, your parents' generation. Did the process of making this film and inhabiting this character, do you think it gave you a sort of a fresh insight into, you know, your parents and that generation? What would you say you took away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I took away a lot. I think, you know, the one of the largest initial hurdles was what I was kind of touching on earlier, of just the image that I had created of my parents' generation, and how strong and powerful that was internally for me, and how that perception kind of coded the view of how I always looked at them as well. And so it was that first initial like hurdle to overcome, which was, you know, this is not an idea of what you think your parents are. You have to really deeply understand what was happening. And I think, you know, as a parent myself, you know, you make a lot of those connections. I think it's a classic thing of just like understanding your parents when you have your own children. So the timing was really interesting for me. But yeah, I think the largest thing that I'm still unpacking is, you know, I am my father's son. You know, I am my father. There's that connection. There's that deep humanity. We lived in different times under different circumstances, doing different things. But you know, personally for me, especially as an actor, and like Isaac said, as a filmmaker, and as Asian Americans, we're kind of working in a space that is not traditional for at least myself or people like us. And so it feels new. It feels like each step doesn't really have a roadmap in front of it. And in that way, I really felt a deep connection to kind of the charge that I think my father probably had as well.